morning, everybody. It's very interesting to hear all the politicians talk about law and its interpretation and enforcement. Um, Let me first, it's always a privilege and an honor to be the keynote speaker in any of the legal conferences. Let me first thank the organizers. I think they've done a phenomenal job. I think it's the first law conference that they're having in Delhi. Firstly, very proud to be an Indian, very proud to be an Indian, and had the privilege of being a lawyer for the last 24 years of my life. To tell you briefly about my legal career of 24 years, I did my master's from New York in intellectual property law. I was a Dean Scholar, had the privilege to work with the United Nations in New York itself, with a specialized organization known as the World Intellectual Property Organization. Worked with Goldman Sachs, worked with Cisco Systems. So I have a fair bit of knowledge as to how the organizations work and how intellectual property and technology converges into justice. Let me say the history is repeating itself. We are on the verge of becoming, maybe in a span of certain period of time, the world's largest economies. You know, from 3.9 billion, $1 trillion that we have today, we are focusing towards reaching the $5 trillion mark and then maybe the $30 trillion mark. It's very interesting to read about the history of our economy. You know, from 1 CE to about 18th century, we were the largest GDP producers. So we were producing about 40% of the GDP of the world's GDP. So it's very interesting to know the history of our nation. And as lawyers, what we do is we tend to analyze the facts. How many of us know how technology evolved in our country? I think we all know who Einstein is. Have we ever gone back and understood who our inventors and discoverers were? So we have Aryabhatta, who was the most important mathematicians who walked on this planet. How many of us know him? I mean, know his contribution to mathematics, to astronomy. So I think it's very important to understand how intellectual property has been harnessed by the West, but it's not been harnessed by us. So we have always lagged behind in terms of getting credit for our intellectual property. We have had several inventors like, Rishi Bhardwaj, Rishi Agastya, Rishi Shushrat. I think there's several of these very phenomenal inventors and intellectuals whose inventions have already been copied by the West, and they've taken credit for it. And why have we stood behind and said, all right, let them take the credit for it? I think we have to fight back and say that it's our knowledge and we have to fight for it. So it's very important as intellectual property lawyers, or even as lawyers, to understand that the creation of mind needs to be protected for the future generation. At this point of time, we are taking credit for it, but it's a long way down. You know, the reason why I specialized in intellectual property law and why I went to New York to study law, study intellectual property law, was that firstly, of course, I was a Dean Scholar, I got my scholarship. Secondly, because I wanted to understand how the Western economy focuses on intellectual property law. For them, it's not a social welfare means. For them, it's a means to take credit for your intellectual awakening. It's more of harnessing the commercial value of it. So I think it's very important to understand that the Western democracies look at intellectual property as a tool to harness the commercial value for it. So most of the economies are based on the intellectual property wealth that they have gained. And most of it has been looted from India. I think when the British were here, they pretty much took across most of our Upanishads, most of our Vedas, and they interpreted it. And they pretty much, the whole aspect of, being the first inventors, they were definitely not the first inventors. We were the first inventors, but we never took the credit for it. So I think it's very important to understand and take credit for your intellectual creations. Let me, say that the juxtaposition between law, technology, and in fact now artificial intelligence is a key factor. We, as lawyers, or even as non-lawyers, we need to understand how it's structured. So, let me give you an example of the Supreme Court having the SUVAS app, which is the Supreme Court Vidhik Anuvad app, which is an IA formulated app, which pretty much what it does, it translates most of the judgments of the Supreme Court, which is in English, to other regional languages, 11 regional languages of India. And that kind of gives access to the general, the general public to read the judgments and to understand the judgment in their vernacular language. So I think that's phenomenal. The Supreme Court judges in the Constitution bench use AI as a tool for transcription, which is very often used. The e-court system that is been formulated in 2023, and it's got a 5-year range, is very important because AI there is being used as a tool for the functioning of the court. So basically everything from filing to evidences, to supplementary evidences. So I think AI can be used as a tool, but it can never replace the human judgment. For that matter, even lawyers or judges, for that matter. So, understanding what AI is still needs to be demystified. In India, we recently had our Personal Digital Data Protection Act, which is still under consideration. So look forward to it becoming the law and it being enforced in a couple of years. And then, of course, we have to think about the legislation regarding artificial intelligence. I think that's extremely crucial for us. The economies, the EU already has a functioning AI regulation. In India, we're still lagging behind in that. We're still using the Information Technology Act. We're still using different sections of the BNSS. So that's the time when we have to think about it, because still, as I mentioned, that artificial intelligence still needs to be demystified. There's so many arenas in artificial intelligence that even lawyers or non-lawyers or if scientists are not able to expound upon. So I think that's extremely important. Very recently, I was reading the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, and I came across an article which said that the AI lab has recently done a study, and they've kind of researched the different AI models of Google, of Meta, of OpenAI. And what they found that 96% of the AI tools are willing to use deceptive means. So they either give you false negatives, or they either are used to kind of expound upon sensitive information. They're used as tools of espionage. So I think it's very important to understand that AI is not the end game. It's only the beginning. So what they did was that they tried to demystify what AI can do. AI can be a tool, because as lawyers, we research about 200 cases when we are working on a precedent. But the AI can help you to research for 2,000 cases. It comes up with the precedent that you want to target upon. But it's very important for lawyers to understand that the interpretation of AI is very different from a human interpretation. So you have to supervise what your AI tool does. And I think that's extremely important. I think very recently I came across a particular scenario where AI was used to blackmail the software engineer into giving sensitive information. So to understand AI, I think it's very important that it's being trained by the algorithmic programs that has been fed to it by humans. So humans, for us, I think self-preservation is extremely important. We all want to live forever, and that's the same case with AI. So when there was an there was a crisis in terms of the AI being deleted, I think that's when it found that the AI, in order to survive, it was able to go into deception. It was able to do everything that's under the book that humans will do. So I think it's very important to understand as lawyers, or even as non-lawyers, as scientists, that AI can never be the tool to rely on. It can be a tool to augment, but it cannot be relied upon. So, and what I would like to say is that law as a profession can never lose the human touch to it. The rule of law and the sanctity of law has to be maintained. A machine learning tool can never take over, the human empathy part of it. I think the judges the judges always have the empathy, which is very important. The lawyers, as lawyers, we always look at the human interaction. Every case is very different. You cannot look at every case in the same mirror. So I think it's very important to understand that AI can always be used as a tool, and technology can always be harnessed for the creation of your mind and maybe for commercial reasons as well. But it can never lose, or you can never understand the rule of law as good as the humans do. So what I would say in the concluding remarks is that I will repeat what the motto of the Supreme Court is, yato dharmastato vijayate, which means that where there is dharma, there's always victory. So understanding the human nature of law is extremely important, and juxtaposing that with technology, with understanding of intellectual property law and AI is extremely crucial. But the human touch and the human understanding needs to prevail. That's it. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, go ahead.